Yeah, no, week's been busy, running the business, managing 200 employees, putting out fires, all the issues.
Oh my gosh. That's how many employees you have? 200?
Yeah, 200 employees.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have two, and it's exhausting. But they're
That's,
great, obviously. They're great.
yeah, that's how I started too. One employee, two employee.
Are any of them like some that have been with you from the beginning?
Now, yeah, I used to think that that was a good thing, and I
Yeah,
realized most people don't change, don't adapt to the big organization. So I wasn't able to keep them. I had to
I
let them
see.
go. They left, they quit, whatever it is. It wasn't a good fit, mainly because like I'm evolving, but others are not capable of evolving for some reason. Like as much as I try to coach them, mentor them, train them, they're stuck in the one, 10 employee clinic model and mindset.
Yeah.
And it clearly doesn't work in a bigger organization.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard, A, like to have the right mentorship, and then B, to find yourself aligned with a bigger purpose. I think that's where most people kind of fall short of their aspirations. It's like they either didn't have the right mentorship or they don't have like a big picture of what they want to do.
Yeah, big dreams and goals and missions, and
Hmm.
learning to adapt and evolve with life, because life changes all the time.
Hmm.
No,
So
nobody's ever same as they were a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
yeah, I think I read an article once that was the strongest predictor of like as an evolutionary trait, adaptability, more than like physical girth or stuff like that. Is just your mind being plastic enough for changes. Because I feel
Absolutely.
like whenever there's upheaval, that's when that shows up the most too. It's like people like are scurrying, like with the pandemic, but other people were like, okay, they just kind of focus on one thing, or the recession before that, and they turned out to be okay.
Yeah, as you're saying that, what comes up to my mind is the saying that we have no enemy outside. Like,
Hmm.
if there's no enemy within, there's no enemy outside. Meaning that we are our own biggest like self-destructive force than anything else. For example, bad habit. Let's say bad habit. No one can force somebody to quit the bad habit unless they want to, even though they want to, unless they take the actions of doing it.
Right.
I don't want to, pick on anybody, but any kind of bad habit that leads to destruction. I mean, I have some, absolutely, admit it, but it's it's usually, yeah, it's usually never the physicality. It's usually never the training. It's always goes back to like the mindset, the hidden, the underlying mission and purpose in life. A lot of people just coast in life without any purpose and mission, just floating by the ocean. If there are waves, they crash and burn. And if there's the divorce, they give up and go into self-destructive mode. You clearly didn't do that. I mean, I can see that in you. You
Yeah, we can get to me too, but I have a like a deeper take on that too. What you're saying, like it's all habits, and you can talk about smoking or something like that. Those things are easy to pick up, like, oh, this is a bad habit that I have. I'm eating a lot of carbs or stress eating. That's an easy bad habit. But these other habits that we have, the self-talk that you're not even aware of until you're like literally learn like taught how to listen to your self-talk. You know what I mean? That is like one of the worst bad habits that everyone has that we don't really talk about. Like, hey, how is your self-talk today? But that is a huge thing about your mental health. if you don't do any bad habits, you don't smoke or whatever, but yet you have a defeatist mentality, or like inferiority complex, or like someone's always begrudged me, and like, so all these thoughts are constantly in your mind, you're going to stifle yourself, just like you said. You're your own like worst enemy sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that the studies show that we have 20 to 30,000 thoughts a day. And when we talk about thoughts, we're talking about self-talk. That's a form of talking to ourselves, or the thoughts that may even not even arise to conscious level. A lot of it is subconscious thoughts, like a voice is, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, what if I fail? Oh, the worst thing is going to happen with this, you know, decision in you know, opening up a new business.
Right.
A lot of that just subconsciously speak to ourselves. And part of self-love and healing and recovery and getting healthier is the self-talk. Physical body comes after. It all starts out with our mind.
For sure. That self-talk is so hard, and it's so hard to really. First of all, it's like part of our subconscious programming since birth. So a lot of it is repetitive, kind of based in memories, and what tends to leave more memories, bad experiences, right? Like you'd have to have a spectacular experience to really remember it. But whereas all the minor joys are kind of forgotten, but then you only remember bad stuff. So then it creates a whole thought cascade that you keep playing and playing in your mind, even though you may have a new thing in your life, and you know, a new avenue to pursue. All these old thoughts are like, oh no, we can't do that. You know what I mean? They're kind of keeping you in this tight space, and you can't evolve, which is what we're talking about here. You know, why we sometimes impede our own evolution. You know?
Yeah, you know, as I studied medicine and realized that, yeah, we're talking about the anatomy and body's physiological functionality, but what really hasn't been emphasized is how much our thoughts control how our body feel. Placebos work because our thoughts believe that this is going to make us better, and this medication is going to work, or this surgery is going to work. Remember that the study about orthopedic surgery, you know, laparoscopic arthroscopy? Half the time they didn't even do anything, but people just got better because they believed, they talked to themselves, hey, this is a surgeon, I got the surgery, now I'm pain-free. And
it's crazy.
Yeah, and the thoughts leads to our emotions leads to decisions and actions that we take on in a day. For example, if our thoughts are, oh gosh, I wake up, this is another day, I don't want to look forward to it, you know, bad things are going to happen. Oh God, I got to go run or walk. I don't, you know, that's ridiculous. It's going to be cold, it's hot, whatever the, you know, thought process is. The emotional, the regulation system, our cortisol levels, adrenaline level, whatever, you know, regulates, and our subconscious goes, okay, boom. Our mind has told us that this is not a good time to go exercise or eat something healthy. We're going to go back to our default status, the neurological programming, the neural connections that's been, you know, programmed for over years of habitual like actions, such as, oh, I'm just going to eat some sugar, cereal, nothing healthy. I just want to feel good. And so that's why a lot of this kind of our health doesn't improve, or it's difficult to improve just with surgeries and medicine alone, without the fundamental change of our minds. If a mind changes, everything changes.
Yeah.
But you know, we humans, we have this tendency to expect the outside to change, the other people to change how they treat us, the economic conditions to get better, the government to slash the tax rates, whatever it is outside, we blame it. And instead of changing our mind and continue our old habitual, you know, processes, seems to be a pattern.
I agree. So it's funny that every discipline has their go-to study to prove the placebo effect, right? We have it in a lot of, obviously we have to account for it in the randomized trials. You know, we arbitrarily picked 5%, right? To say if it's 95% accurate, then we can leave 5% to placebo, and it's a valid study. But the placebo has been shown to be up to like 20% and even higher, you know. And it just shows like how your mind really kind of can affect your not just your mental health but your actual physical health, which is wild to me, because we never studied that in medical school. In fact, placebo was something we were annoyed by, the way medicine was presented, at least even in my field. Like osteopathic is supposed to be more holistic. Like it was still presented as, okay, we got these medications, they're really good, but we got this placebo effect, we don't know if they're really good. You know what I mean? Whereas we should be studying this, we should be like diving deep into it as to, how can we make people or help people become more positively oriented towards their health, because that's like a whole free 20% that you can grab, and it's at least 20%. Imagine that with the medications that actually work, and that's the difference we see in the office every day when we prescribe the same therapy to the happy patient, and as opposed to the unhappy patient that has a lot of medical issues, that is caught in a mindset. We actually know, like, oh, this is not even going to work on this one, and this one's going to be fine, and that is also placebo. That's like built in to the type of patient.
Yeah, the whole healthcare industry, there's so many different interests, profit motives, pharmaceutical industry for one, insurance industry for another. It's literally impossible for average person to fight that, or average doctor to speak out against, because that's the system that we're in. We can't change it. We can't. When the prescription medicine comes out and they say, oh, it's 30% effective, we don't know how much of that is placebo, right? We have no idea.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the programming and advertising and doctors saying, oh, I've seen it work. It works great. I mean, it could be 25% of that is placebo. We have no idea yet. A lot of these medications carry side effects. I think that's one of the reasons I went into surgery. Surgery, yes, even surgeries have placebos. I've seen it all along, but it's actual physical change. It's not a medication that also carries a side effect. Of course, surgery has side effect as well, potential for complication. I get that. But I think given the options, I found it to be better in terms of intervention-wise. Hey, I could go in there and change this process. I can't change that person's mind because that has to come from within, but at least I can help with this part. Hey, this is broken. If the artery's blocked, I could at least open it. If the vein's not working, I could, help it the circulation to improve.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the gratifying things about the procedure-based medicine, right? Is that no one can argue that this was a 70% blockage and now it's 0% blocked. After you put a stent, that's very gratifying, and you expect it to translate into good outcomes.
Yeah.
But it all goes back to the individual, and that is something. One of my, I have like a patient group that I see that I think placebo is the whole thing. The treatment is not really treating them. Oh, there's nothing wrong with you. Here's a placebo. But I'm thinking about the palpitations workup. So I often get patients that look otherwise healthy, usually young professionals with palpitations. And you could kind of see it in them, like, yeah, they're too stressed, their adrenaline's through the roof all the time, and they feel their heart racing. So when we see those patients, the main thing we worry about is like SVT, or now I'm equally worried about AFib. I don't care who it is anymore, young and old. I've seen it all over the place. It's like an epidemic. You know what I mean? And it's not as simple as we thought. I'll come back to AFib in a little bit, but so we do the workup. We put a monitor, check their echo, make sure the context is okay. Are you okay? Okay,
yeah,
good.
Okay.
So we do the workup, but I think, and then more often than not, the monitors are clean, the echo is fine, and so their heart is fine from what we can detect. But I think it took that visit, the validation of the concern, and then the workup to be negative, and now that kind of smooths out the patient's mental state a little bit. So, you know, then they're like, okay, I am working too hard. I had to see a cardiologist, for God's sake, and nothing is wrong. And I get kind of a fresh lease on this. You know what I mean? So I think it's good to, at least, at the very least, we may not know how to help them, is just get a good listen in, you know? And what I've been doing lately is, I read this book called Letting Go by David Hawkins. Have you heard of him?
No, I haven't.
He had the Hawkins Institute in Sedona up until probably, maybe till about 10 years ago. But anyway, so he's like an MD, very much into like holistic healing. And his biggest thing, I mean, the book is called Let Go, or Letting Go. And it's to internalize whatever the subject matter is, whatever's stressing you out, kind of feel it where it's accumulated, and then let it go. That practice alone seems to, you know, seems to abate the stress that's in your body, and like whatever behavior pattern. So like I tell the patients this now, like, having listened to your story, like, you seem like you're not, you know, you're not doing well. I feel this right here. So this is how I do it. This is how I let go of this situation you told me. And I tell them, that's why I feel it. And then most people will mimic your behavior anyway. Okay. And then if they don't, I tell them, listen, take a deep breath. Where is it accumulated? Right there. Just let it go. You know, do that a few times. And it's so relaxing in the moment. And I feel like that's the crux of that book, is that's how we should process emotion. Instead of, oh yeah, what I just saw sucks, let's put it over here. I won't think about it till it accumulates and it becomes a problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something happened. And just let it go. And it's so much nicer to proceed like this. You know, things come at you, let them go, let them go. I'm making it sound easier than it is. It's literally a whole book, but it's a really helpful tool. At least for me, I'm a very empathic person. So when someone tells me a lot of grief, it accumulates. And normally I'm like, okay, off the next one. And then like, you know, we're humans too. So we gotta recognize that as well.
That's a great point that you're making about letting things go. I think where a lot of people have problems with is knowing how to do it. It's more than, you know, just deep breath or doing meditations or going for a walk or bicycle or run. It has to come from within their mindset. For example, what I do is a couple of tools that I use. One is basically mindfulness, becoming aware of what my emotions are. A lot of times we experience 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 emotions that get so combined and confused and mixed. It's hard to tease out, what am I really feeling? Why am I feeling bad right now? Okay. And when we verbalize it by talking to another person or journaling or playing, whatever, you know, their method of choice is, when we verbalize it, it becomes real. For example, I can, you know, do my main go-to is journaling. I journal, hey, I'm feeling frustrated, angry, disappointed, let down. For example, just applying for one thing that didn't get done at work that is causing a lot of problems. You know, I feel angry towards my team members, disappointed that they let me down, doubting myself. I feel unsure of myself. Why, you know, I wasn't able to stay on top of that. And once I verbalize it, once I identify the emotions involved, I let myself feel it. Instead of making an in-the-moment decision about, this guy cut me off, I'm so angry, I'm going to go out there and start kicking their door. No, just letting ourselves experience the emotion, first identifying it, and then experiencing it. Let the emotions pass through, experiencing it. If it's anger, the way we teach our kids to deal with anger is to feel it, not to suppress it or, you know, sweep it down the rug or hide it or whatever it is, or the common old saying, oh, suck it up or stuff it.
Yeah. Yep.
That's the worst thing. That leads to cardiopulmonary vascular disease, cancer, stomach ulcers, obesity, you name it. All the disease comes from that emotion. But once you identify it, and it takes a long time to really start identifying. It takes a lot of practice, a lot of reading spiritual literature, recovery, healing literatures, psychological literature. There are tons out there. But then once we allow ourselves to experience it, we feel it, and then feeling changes. I have many feelings throughout the day, and I don't act on every one of them because I know some of them are not based on reality or reflecting of what, if I were to make a decision right there and say, I'm going to fire this person, that's not a good thing for me. It's not the right thing. Rationally, reasonably, they didn't do anything wrong. I didn't provide enough coaching. I didn't provide enough mentorship. I didn't stay on it enough. I didn't tell them, enough times that this is how it needs to get done. But so the way I handle it, those kind of strong emotions and letting things go is by experiencing it and then letting it go after I experience it.
Yeah.
When I have a particular issue with it, any one experience or emotions, let's say it's something really negative, I start talking to myself on the journal. Hey, what's the worst thing that will happen from this? Okay, well, you know what? I lost money. This relationship isn't, going to work out. I may break up, and just kind of talking through, journaling what the worst thing is, and then it becomes clear to me. Oh, okay, this wasn't that bad. It's not the end of the world. I'm not going to die. The world isn't coming to an end. I think a lot of times those road rages occur. I don't get road rages because I just let it go. And when I let it go, it's a whole complex process of thought process that goes through my mind, even subconsciously. I'm not even aware of it anymore because it's so ingrained in me. I go, what's the worst thing that can happen? Oh, I'm late. I get to my destination 5 seconds later. Okay, not a big deal. 30 seconds later, a minute later. Okay, so what? So what? It's not a big deal. And that's part of my self-talk that can help me regulate my emotional decision-making skills. And I think I've been successful mainly because of these tools that I've learned a long time ago that I've started practicing and implementing.
These methods of letting go. So you've been doing that as a discipline for a while?
Yeah, it's absolutely ingrained, and I stay on it. It's not a one-time read a book and start practicing it for the rest of my life. It's something that's constant, daily, weekly, monthly kind of thing where I brush up on reading these kind of psychological literatures about cognitive disorders, black and white thinking, all these things that we tend to have. Most humans have this tendency to make these cognitive errors in our decision, in our thought processes. And then when I read those, I start becoming more aware of when I do that. And then awareness is a key in healing because now I'm able to stop myself and go, oh, I'm thinking black and white. I'm thinking this person is bad or this person is all good just because one thing. No. And then I do self-talk to myself, everybody has good and bad side, strength and weaknesses. It's okay. We can let other people be, just as I have my weaknesses. I vape. I drink. I admit it. It's not good. And yes, I am aware of it. I am working on it.
But I know you brought it up.
Yeah. Oh, 1 second. Let me turn the fan on here.
Okay. So mindfulness, self-reflection, and experiencing the emotion. Yeah, I would agree with all that. I think experiencing the emotion is something that I felt like I'm good at avoiding. You know, that was like a coping strategy that I had from a very young kid, and probably had to do with like growing up in a war zone. And so you have categories in your mind where you can put things in, like entire category of things. But as I got older, I felt like my world got wider, my worldview got wider, and I've slowly eliminated all these areas where bad things can go hide in my mind. You know, so I think most bad things, which we all experience bad things, you can't not experience bad things, because that's the only way we're gonna grow. You know, we need to do that process, that getting the negative stimulus, processing it properly, and then expand to accommodate it. You know, that's literally what growth is about. So in these circumstances, these people cut you off, or employees don't perform as you wished, or something, you know, you let yourself down. You know, all these things have to be taken in a greater context. Like, okay, what can I learn from this situation? What can I learn from this person? You know, a really good example of how that subconscious thinking gets out of control was last week. I had a patient, and he was a friend of a previous patient of mine. And his friend is he's a good friend of mine. The patient is a good friend of mine because I've known him for a long time. I've taken care of his like difficult issue for a long time. And he kind of, I could tell he was like reluctantly bringing me his friend as a patient. And I'm like, dude, thanks for you know, there's no greater compliment, and I'll get to see him in the visit too. But then I saw why he was kind of reluctant. His friend had just been told he needs to stay in the hospital for dialysis. He was a middle-aged guy, and who came in. He came into the office visit with his mom and my other patient, completely intoxicated, like completely lit. And he was like one of those, kind of like what you're saying, splitting. You know, like with borderline. You know how they're splitting with borderline personality disorder. So I love you and I hate you. Okay, he was oscillating with that literally every minute. He loved and hated me. Like, I was going to be the hero doctor, because I was just listening to what he's telling me, which, by the way, none of it was cardiac. It wasn't cardiology, but he needs to see a doctor, like, so that's why they brought him into me, you know, like a new set of eyes on him. And he was just telling me, I'm not going to do what you say. Doctors are assholes. And like, well, you want to go? He said that to me like 2 or 3 times in the same conversation. Is like, you're a great guy, man. You're a great guy. Where are you from? And like, it's this back and forth. And my mind like had to like, oh, dude, I literally, I mean, I told what in that situation. So his creatinine was like 3.5 at a recent admission. And and then in that labs, I saw what it was a year ago, which was normal, but it had incrementally getting worse. And he's been drinking like crazy. I'm like, okay, I just have one question. Are you making urine? You know, he said he was, but his only consumption is probably alcohol. So I'm like, okay, so number one thing is the alcoholism. You can't come back into this office intoxicated, because he was kind of like fresh with the staff and with me, that I mentioned constantly. But I didn't take it personal, because I knew he was in a state, you know, the alcohol had put him in a completely unconscious state. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's why we like alcohol. We're up here, always frontal cortex, you know, making decisions. And then alcohol brings us here. And it's nice. Take a break from that guy that's worrying about all that stuff. And then we're over here. But on a deeper level, alcohol is just like this cauldron of emotion, you know? That's why it can be so dangerous. Like, you'll think you can drive because your ego tells you, but it's really just your emotion. You know, it's just really, really bizarre how that drug works. It's amazing that it's even legal compared to other things, which don't seem to me as dangerous. You know, like if someone smokes too much marijuana, they're not going to drive. But if you drink alcohol, you can kill yourself in one setting. Anyone can. You can go blind. You can have liver or kidney failure, like my friend over here. And it's completely legal. And imagine, like, I couldn't even tell him the advice, hey, stop drinking, because what will happen? He'll DTs, right? He can die from the withdrawal. Like, that's how crazy alcohol is. You can literally die from stopping it too quickly. So yeah, so I told him, like, you can't come back here drunk, and I need you to see these. So we tried to get him set up with like a dependency clinic, but he wasn't gonna go. So I talked to his mom and my friend, or his friend. I'm like, guys, that's the number one issue right now. And if he stops peeing, then he's got to go back to the hospital for that means he needs dialysis. So that was a good example of someone's like unconscious mind just going crazy.
Well, thank you for sharing me about your war zone. You're from Lebanon, right?
Yes, yes,
I'm,
and it's a war zone again. 40 years later, that
yeah,
that whole area is like cyclical rounds of violence. Like America is now, because of the technological advances, they can get a bigger glimpse of it. But it's been just like that since I was a kid, exactly like that. The scale of the death is always different, but it's exactly the same proportion of Arabs, Jews, and the same stories circle back up. It's crazy. It's literally like watching a rerun, you know?
yeah.
And that's kind of how society oscillates too. Every 40 years, it goes through a different cycle. Have you read this book called The Pendulum?
No.
It talks about that. It talks about how society fluctuates every 40 years for a complete cycle of 80 years. So we're like at the end of a cycle right now. That's why there's so much upheaval, according to this book theory. Anyway, do you follow politics at all?
No, I hate politics. I
Yeah,
don't like any one side.
yeah,
I'm more about humanity. Like, my heart goes out for
same.
Lebanese people.
Yeah,
Violence is, it's just anywhere.
on,
Right, whichever side, the war zone,
yeah,
civilians, children, women, and old people just getting hurt and killed. It's a sadness to humanity as a whole. As an advanced civilization, we will
yeah,
think that our humanity now has gotten to a point where we can honor and respect and safeguard every precious life. We can't. We don't. It's just mind-boggling that we've come to having these cell phones in our hands, yet these things can still happen. And so my heart
yeah,
goes for Lebanese people, anybody in the world that's suffering in the war, terroristic attacks, violence, whatever it is. It's just um it's a sadness for us all. I think that brings me back to your patient. It's all about one thing that I'm actually happy about right now is a lot of societal awareness of mental health, focus, mental health improvement, getting in touch with emotions. Because when, let's say, a politician who are not emotionally mature, who hasn't really healed their scars or of traumas from the past, are now given the position of power, making these decisions to kill people, that's what happens. It's like,
yeah,
oh my God, we can't. I mean, we can't fix it except to just bring awareness to it, so that a lot more people would recognize how hard it is. These childhood traumas, these suppressed and oppressed emotions that we had as a child. When we were children, we had no way of coping with it. We didn't know what tools to use. We didn't know how to read a book to learn these thought processes of consciousness, emotions, becoming awareness, and all those things. When I hear about your patient like that, I sense a lot of hidden trauma, a lot of self-medicating. Alcohol isn't the problem. He's medicating his trauma, the traumatic pain, emotional pain, mental pain that he has, in addition to the physical pain. I'm sure that everything's hurting in his body: joints, muscles, liver,
no.
kidney.
I think he's keeping the intoxication at a 10, because he's like, oh, I feel great.
It's self-medication.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
literally self-medicating himself to death
yeah. I
because
know. If he
he
cuts
hasn't
back,
addressed.
he's gonna feel terrible, like more and more terrible, and then he's gonna probably fall asleep, and he may need to be monitored for DTs, honestly.
Or start getting jaundice because of liver
Yeah.
cirrhosis.
Oh yeah,
liver
that's
transplant, you name it. It's all, we already know how these diseases progress. Diseases of the body and diseases of the mind. Diseases of the heart, and disease of the heart and mind leads to these wars and innocent people dying, and then also leads to these alcoholisms and addictions and anything else that destroys our own bodies.
That was the other thing he reminded me. Like, we always think of alcohol as damaging to your liver, right? But it's also very damaging to your kidneys. I think it's like 20 to 30% of CKD is alcohol related. So it's not fun. It's not fun for the kidneys, and which makes sense. And the heart doesn't like it at all. Like, a lot of dysrhythmias, there's classically atrial fibrillation that alcoholics get. That's very hard to treat. Then, not to mention all the mouth stuff, the esophagitis, the ulcers, and then the portal hypertension changes.
Of course.
Do you know, like, when you see the telangiectasias on the nose,
yeah.
And then the puffy cheeks, like the jolly look. And then there's like the advanced cirrhotic where he's like very skinny, emaciated, yellowish. There's different looks to alcoholism. That's how prevalent it is.
There's so much damage it does to the entire body from these self-medicating substances, all because we haven't worked through and healed our childhood traumas, childhood emotional suppressions. I can't imagine what growing up in the war zone must have been like, but it doesn't even have to be a war zone. It could just be from a toxic family where the parents are fighting all the time and the kids were. Healthcare is this one industry where you cannot adjust the price according to the inflation. Every other industry, if there's an inflation, cost of goods, employment, payroll, everything, lease amount goes up, you're able to raise the price to accommodate for them, and supply and demand. If there's a lot of demand and less supply, they can raise the price so that the supply and demand meets. Or if there's a lot of supply but no demand, companies will go out of business, or they'll have to lower their prices so that it matches the economy. Obviously, the system isn't perfectly fluid that it always meets that, but it's relatively that, and that's what the government works toward, and that's what the society kind of works toward. Healthcare is the industry that you cannot raise prices unless obviously you're opting out of insurance, in which case it doesn't. It's very minimum small percentage of the overall healthcare providers who can do that. It's plastic surgeons, yes, absolutely, they can do that. But any other medicine is all insurance based.
I don't know. That's going to be a problem. I mean, I think they did some studies that they think doctors are getting paid too much. So maybe that's why that's okay. Plus, we don't really organize as much to be able to do anything about it. So we just kind of, the ones that take insurance, we just kind of listen to what they say, because we don't have a choice. Could you go off insurance? I don't think I would be able to have a cardiology practice.
No, no one can. A lot of family practitioners try that, and they all went bankrupt. They all failed within a couple of years. They try to make it work, invested their own money doing it. It doesn't work because the public expects the insurance as a coverage means for health insurances. We might as well have one single payer system.
I agree.
At least control it that way, instead of having so many different varying interests and competitors. Because if it's one system, then the opposite competitive system will be the cash basis. Hey, people who want and only are willing to provide that kind of services at a convenience, a time, whatever, can do that. I know there's a lot of problems with that, but I think single payer solution is the ultimate way to go. And that is the ultimate way to standardize everything, get efficiency out of the system. Instead of all these hodgepodge insurance, this and this company that, it's so cumbersome in all the money wasted administration.
Yeah, exactly.
Whenever you administer an insurance plan, things like that, you're spending billions and trillions of
Yeah,
dollars
exactly.
in
Exactly.
people doing actuarial work studies, sending the bills, collecting, all the administrative work that goes in, instead of actually the money going to the patients to get the care they need.
Yeah, no, it's definitely the way to go. You
Yeah.
just talked about how much money you'd save with admin, but then you can also implement, like, impl like start new programs very easily. Let's say you want to have a new diabetes initiative. It's going to go across the whole payers. It's going to be done. You know what I mean? I remember things like that when we were on HAP, when we lived in Michigan. They'd have an initiative and boom, all its members have it. And it's great. And then there's a lot of, like, I've been hearing some really good things about some insurances my patients have, some of the incentives they're doing. A lot of them are giving them free gym memberships and some nutritional services. I mean, it's great. They're thinking ahead of the box. So we can combine all these things. I think Medicare is close to being perfect, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, but those are state
yeah,
initiative. Instead of
yeah,
every state spending time and energy and
yeah,
money
yeah.
researching and coming up with these systems, it could all be centralized. I think Medicare system is good,
No, I
and
agree.
add mental health, psychologists, whole spectrum of holistic health wise, and that would really
Yeah,
keep the citizens healthier. Anybody who's uninsured and driving drunk and hitting other people, they can be insured. It's not a hodgepodge who has and who doesn't
yeah,
have, and who has a good
yeah,
job that pays and who doesn't. It's such
yeah,
a fragmented system that causes more confusion, more problems, waste more money. I'm a big proponent of a Medicare for all and just standardize it. That way, employers don't have to pay taxes, or employers can pay the taxes directly for Medicare taxes into it.
yeah,
Children can be covered. None of these having to rely on the states and different organizations. It would just be
yeah.
standard one, make it efficient, and allow more money to be spent on actual patient care, medications or surgeries or seeing the doctors.
Yeah, and then Medicare already has the infrastructure federally.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think it makes perfect sense. I think that could be like relatively easily implemented. All these other companies would probably fight it like crazy.
Oh yeah, because
it'll be a huge war.
Of course,
Yeah.
That's the problem with this country. There's so many conflicting interests, financial interests, shareholders. Do you think they're going to want to give up their shareholder, profit margin to give to Medicare? No, they're going to fight it, lobby it.
No, it'll be a huge disruption to the.
Right, it will kill the plan.
Economy. Yeah, and then a lot of doctors, they already complain about it, and they're gonna let those doctors can do, fee for service, do their own thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but everybody else.
I mean, credentialing alone, like a family practice doctor, they have to make a separate application to 50 or more health insurance plans to get on their network. That is just mind-boggling admin money wasted. Use that for patient care. Use that to cover more Plavix or whatever aspirin they need. Keep the patients healthier. I think there's just so much and going on, and the waste isn't someone doing more procedures than they needed, whatever. I mean, I'm sure there are some bad apples out there. Any system does, but I think
Medicare has got some checks and balances.
Of course.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not perfect, but you can't do whatever you want. They'll tell you no, or they won't pay you. So I mean, so it's not like we can gouge them if that's the worry there. I think if anything, it will save money immediately. Start saving money immediately.
Absolutely. I agree.
Because all that catastrophic care that's not covered, that's already comes back to the taxpayers. That will be taken care of. That will be, and then there'll be more preventative programs you can implement. Every doctor you go to has to implement this.
Yeah.
Because it's whatever, and maybe it's even the wrong advice, but at least we're all on the same page.
Absolutely.
So is that a good point to end our podcast?
Yeah, no, I think that was good.
Yeah, we'll. I have a couple people that might be interested. It was just short notice for them.
No problem. Let's bring on some guests.
Good to see you, brother. Take care.
I'll see you later.